do you think that the opposition in some way this time set the narrative? For example, on caste census, the opposition set the narrative on what they claimed was their definition of nyay or justice. Even went to the extent of saying Samvidhan khatre mein hai, that if the BJP gets 400 seats, they will change the constitution. And therefore, the Prime Minister was forced in some way to respond that the government is actually responding to a narrative set by the opposition this time.
Well, you make up your mind. Either you said personally that the Prime Minister is actually making up issues along the way, and now you're saying he's responding to issues.
No, he's making up issues to distract from what the opposition is trying to say.
No, look, the Prime Minister has every right to pitch the terms of the debate in any way they like, just as the opposition has every right to pitch it on the way they want to. That's the way elections are fought. The way it's up to the people, it's up to the electorate to accept which one is credible. Now the point is, the opposition finds itself that compared or when contrasted with the force of a Modi speech, they go on the defensive and then they start shouting blue murder, foul, you can't do that. Now elections are not fought by ticking the boxes of an opinion poll.
Sure, but they're not fought by divisive slogans either. They're not fought by divisive slogans either, sir.
When you're talking about Rojgari,
but they're not fought by divisive slogans.
The economy, etc. Those are issues which come across with the Viksit Bharat. Those are issues which come across with your track record. And there's nothing more compelling than your track record. And I think that track record speaks volumes. Having established the track record, you can then embellish it with attacks on the opposition, what they've said, etc., what they haven't said, or maybe even make a caricature of it. That's part of life. That is how elections are fought. And I'm glad that elections are fought like that, because elections in the end are also a carnival. It's not a boring exercise.
Sure. You're saying that therefore Viksit Bharat and track record of the Modi government, the Modi ki guarantee is very much the central theme
of this. It's central.
Okay, you're saying it's central. Then explain to me why does a headline come as it did this morning where the Prime Minister says the Congress is silent on Adani Ambani because the black money must have reached them. They must answer this, by which tempo it's reached them. Where is Viksit Bharat when the Prime Minister seems to suggest that if the Congress comes to power, then reservations will be snatched away from SC, ST, OBCs and given to Muslims? When he does that, then is he fighting on his track record or simply generating fear about the other side?
Why a headline has come is to ask the particular publication or the television channel concerned. I don't think the Prime Minister can dictate the headline. What you can do is actually take the totality of his speech and say, look, did he talk about the fact that development took place in this part of the country or not? Did he talk about the Modi guarantees? Did he talk about them? Did he talk about the fact that the architecture of welfareism in India has been established and made more transparent? Did he talk about the fact that the crooks in the system are on the retreat? Did he talk about it? Now, of course, it is the right of the editorial classes to pick up the new element. And this is what I'm saying about a prolonged election campaign. That, you've got to look for that novelty. The editorialists have to look for that novelty. And here they found him hitting out at, Adani or Ambani or whatever it is, that whole thing is. It's a one-day issue. It's a one-day issue.
You're saying Ambani, Adani is one-day issue. It's not a self-goal in any way.
Well, you can go. We'll see whose goal it is. When the results come out, we can talk about anything. The election is not going to be resolved in the television studios. In 2019, it wasn't resolved in the television studios. In 2014, when Modi was appointed, when he was chosen as the BJP's prime ministerial candidate, I recall in your studios, there was such jubilation. Because I said the BJP has really, shot itself in the foot. They've chosen such a polarizing figure.
Not me, but there may have been others. There may be other political commentators who said that. But let me ask you this: 2014 and 19, since you mentioned it, 2014, Swapan Dasgupta was seen as an election for change. People wanted change. and Mr. Modi became a symbol of that change. 2019, it seemed that the election became about a need for a muscular leadership, muscular nationalism, again embodied by Prime Minister Modi. What is it in 2024? Why is it that we are not seeing that kind of enthusiasm, at least when one travels among crowds, that one saw to some extent in 2014 and 2019? Is it fatigue? Is it just that people have heard many of these speeches before? What's the sense you get? Is there a 10-year itch?
No, it's not a 10-year itch. What I think has happened, in fact, is that there is a certain confidence that the elections have been predetermined. I don't believe that that's a very nice thing to happen. But anyway, among a lot of people, they said, look, it's settled. Modi ji is going to become the prime minister. The question is whether BJP gets 300, 350, 400, whatever those sort of numbers are being played at. But the important thing here is that they are choosing continuity. The ship of India is sailing very well, smoothly. They want no disruption in it. And maybe that enthusiasm, which normally accompanies elections where change is the main criterion. Among all the elections, I think 2014 had the greatest amount of enthusiasm on the ground. You know, it was quite boisterous, raucous, etc. Because there was a thing about change, getting this guy in. You know, for a lot of people, Modi was not merely just a candidate. He was a project. And I think that project also came about it was manifested in 2019, when it was showing that leadership, determined leadership was a thing. And now India is in safe hands.
Right, because
India is in safe hands with the Prime Minister, whose track record is there for you to examine and see and assess.
Because it's interesting, what you say is an inevitability of the outcome may have led fewer people to get enthused about the election. Shashi Tharoor seems to suggest it's indifference. Now, one side suggests there's an inevitability about the outcome that is not enthused people.
And the heat, you know, I think the election commission should actually examine whether, you know, having a 7-phase election, I believe the 7-phase election is very good for West Bengal. But a 7-phase election may not be the most ideal thing to happen for the rest of an entire country. So, I mean, maybe you have to, you know, we have to think about it. Maybe we must think about elections in winter as it used to happen. But various things we can assess all that later.
But Swapan Dasgupta, this election started, let's say, about 6 to 8 weeks ago. In the build-up, ab ki baar 400 par. We don't hear that with the same effervescence. Is that a recognition that this election, as it has gone on, has become possibly more localized, reflects certain diversities? An election in each state has its own peculiar circumstances in a subcontinental sized country. Is that why the BJP perhaps has got also a bit of a reality check as the campaign has gone on? Some of that bombast of ab ki baar 400 par seems to be missing for whatever reason?
Well, whenever they shout, you may not have gone to a lot of BJP rallies. You can see them on television. You can see whenever he says ab ki baar, and people spontaneously respond 400 bar. It's sort of gone into people's psyche. But I think it's important to recognize one thing, that every election, there is a pan-India dimension, and then there are local dimensions. Now, the Congress, which is, or the lack of a Congress, I mean, since Congress is not even fighting so many seats, but the opposition, which doesn't have a pan-India intervention here, they are more inclined to make it an election about potholes and drains. Whereas the BJP is more inclined to make it an election about leadership, about India's position in the world, India, the economy, and where the country is going. It's to make it a Lok Sabha election. The others want to make it a municipal election. I think that's a different approach.
Those are strategic issues.
Those are different. If they succeed in making it a municipal election, they will be.
So what's your sense? What's your sense? Has it got localized in any way, or is that wishful thinking?
There is always a local dimension. There is always a local dimension. You see, in West Bengal, where I am now, the BJP people are talking about Modi ji's campaign, etc. But at the same time, there is, because of this Mamta issue, that also is bringing. But if they make it exclusively a Mamta issue, an election about Mamta Banerjee, that serves Mamta Banerjee. That doesn't serve the BJP. So it's also the difference of how you strategize the election and you approach the electorate. And people have the different ways of approaching the electorate. The Congress and the opposition really want to make it far more local, and the BJP actually wants to make it far more national.
So at this halfway stage, do you at all see any anti-incumbency, any fatigue creeping in, narratives about Rozgar actually being heard perhaps more loudly than they were 5 or 10 years ago? Is this one of the challenges the BJP has faced this time, that 10 years in power is a reasonably long time, and therefore there will be an element of anti-incumbency that they've had to deal with?
Of course, the 10 years is a very long, it's a long time in power, and it's very interesting that in 10 years, the element of anti-incumbency has been very nominal. I think what's really thing is that as we saw in all elections, from 2014 to 2019, midway in the election, you get what they start talking about, a late swing, which is a late counter swing, and that the opposition feels buoyant, and various people on the basis of anecdotal evidence, and if you look at the social media postings, you will find what I'm talking about, of the pundits who go around saying, the body language of the Prime Minister is a bit suspect, and therefore that means that the BJP is doing badly, etc., etc. Now, I think my own assessment is that there is nothing which has happened in the first 3 phases, and if you notice that the turnout actually is beginning to creep up because of the first phase. I think people took it a bit too easy. I think that motivation, the encouragement to voters to go up and vote, I think is giving it. And I think, broadly speaking, there is nothing to suggest that the assessments which people made at the beginning of the election should in any way be revised. This is not to say that I'm giving a number on what it is, but I think the broad thrust, which is really what we can do at this stage, give the broad thrust suggests that Prime Minister Modi is heading for a 3rd term in office.
The reason I ask you that in conclusion is because when I put that to Shashi Tharoor, suggesting that while the opposition was gleeful almost that the BJP may not touch 400, they were not giving me a number for the opposition, but he believes that the BJP is slowly dipping below 250, possibly below 240. You clearly don't agree with that.
Well, I certainly don't see the BJP anyway falling below 300. The 300 is a given. And
that's just the BJP or the BJP and allies?
No, BJP.
Okay.
BJP is there. And therefore, we are talking in terms of how much close they can get to the sum.
This despite the fact that they had maxed out in North and Central India in 2019, you're still confident that the BJP will get 300?
The BJP will get 300 plus.
Okay.
We will get 300 plus. The Prime Minister has pitched a 400 election. The Prime Minister seems determined to see that through. There may be certain undercurrents which are not very obvious, and people may be voting, and we may suddenly find that, the South has produced dramatic results, the East has produced dramatic results, and the North and West and Central have said, what we've chosen so far is very good, and we persist with that.
Okay.
So it could happen. I mean, Shashi's assessment of 2000 is based on wishful thinking. It's part of the election game, is it? Because I know nobody is really going to take you to task on the 4th evening when it doesn't happen that way. It's part of the game.
Okay, I've recorded both what you and Shashi have said very carefully. We will keep it.
That's fine.
We will keep it for the 4th of June, and it's good to have. It's good to have two.
Good friends. We've been debating with each other for the past 50 to 60 years, from college onwards. And we have different perspectives on how elections or how Indian politics and how the future of India should shape out. And this is part of the revolution of that.
Okay, let's leave it there. Swapan Dasgupta, pleasure talking to you and getting your perspective. Thank you so much for joining me here on this political rumble. News and updates continue on the other side. You watch two fine voices giving us their very diverse perspectives of the campaign at the halfway stage. Back in a moment.